may not be the people really running the show. That is a staggering leap for most people who really do think that when they show up at the ballot box, or they go to a caucus, or they participate in some kind of poll, that has real power. No, that has power in the public venue, but the real determiners of our fate are being determined in private and in secret, and we identify in Dark Mission. Notice how elegantly I brought it back to my book?
That was a lovely
Thank you.
segue.
We identify the 3 secret power groups who are in fact behind and in charge of and fighting with each other for power under the NASA emblem. And they are, because I can see that's where you want to go, they are the Nazis, the Masons,
wow.
and the magicians.
Very good. Very good. So that's actually stunning that you would actually name them, at least at that level.
Why is it stunning? It's the truth.
Because very few people will.
But that's what Dark Mission's all about, to tell people the truth. Because, George had a guest on the other night, he actually was a minister. He was a pastor who was taken by one of the top vice presidents of Atlantic Richfield up to Prudhoe Bay in the 70s when they were drilling on the North Slope and building the pipeline.
Right. And
he, was very fond during his 4 hours on coast of quoting again and again from, one of the biblical proverbs. The truth shall set you free. Know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Well, the first step on the road to freedom is knowing you're being lied to. And one of the mantras that we have throughout Dark Mission is a line that was actually given to me by one of these intel agents. You get calls from these people, you actually even have dinner with them, they come to conferences. You never really know how much of what they're telling you is the truth and how much is spin, how much is a veiled lie with a bit of truth embedded, otherwise no one will ever buy it. So you're constantly making decisions when you rely on sources, which we at Enterprise really try not to do, and I'll expand on that in a minute. This individual gave me a stunningly interesting line. In fact, it probably was the second most important thing that anybody in public life has ever told me. The first was my old friend Gene Roddenberry, which I'll get back to in a second. This intel agent said to me in one of our early conversations, reiterated over and over again, it's become kind of like an in-joke, when we're on the phone talking to each other. The lie is different at every level. Meaning that even the people who are in front of the camera spinning, telling you that the world is coming to an end, telling you that the dollar is crashing, telling you that we're running out of oil, telling you that we have to nuke Iran before they nuke us, telling you that, Saddam had weapons of mass destruction, most of those people really believe what they're telling you. Because they've been told lies by people that they trust.
Right.
So the lie goes up the line. Every little group is controlled and contained and constrained by being fed exactly how much BS they will believe. So they can come out in front of the cameras at like the National Press Club or at the White House when the president's spokesperson comes out. She believes 99% of the stuff she's saying. She's not in on the lie. She doesn't know it's a lie, because if she did, she couldn't be the actress that she is.
Exactly.
The lie has to be different at every level in order for the entire assemblage of lies to ultimately control all the rest of us and to contain the truth. And by contain, I don't mean, encapsulate it. I mean suppress it.
Okay,
keep it away.
Tell me something. When did you get clued in? All those years back when you were working for Walter Cronkite.
Yes.
Were you clued in then?
Oh, that I wish I had been. No, I was young, I was naive, I was idealistic, I was so enthralled with the idea that they would tap a 23-year-old on the shoulder and actually listen to my advice. But I was paying attention. I just didn't have the big picture. And I'll give you an example. We had a meeting one evening in the executive producer's office, and it was on a weekend, and there was supposed to be this press conference by astronauts. I think it was during Apollo 8. What you do is you launch from the Cape, you'd spend 3 days going to the moon, you do your thing at the moon, go into orbit, land, whatever, then you would take 3 days coming home. Normally under these missions, the only people that ever got to talk to the astronauts was what was called a CAPCOM, a capsule communicator, basically another astronaut. And NASA set this policy up in the very beginning because you don't want confusion under critical moments of too many voices. So even all the other flight controllers, all the other people at NASA that are running the mission, all funnel their information through one guy who then talks to the crew. The first deviation from that really important and obviously responsible position was this Sunday afternoon when the astronauts were falling home to Earth, nothing to do for 2 or 3 days between Earth and Moon. I mean, just imagine that scene. You're floating in 0G. There's this incredible views out the window, the Earth out one window, the Moon receding out the other. And you basically bored. So what they did is they set up the first press conference in space where members of the press assembled in Houston got a chance to go on mic and actually directly ask the astronaut questions. They had 3 astronauts on the Apollo program. This was unheard of. This was amazing. This was wonderful. This was transparency. So we're looking at our clocks and watches, and we're looking at the monitors, and we've got the links, satellite links to Houston, and we're waiting, in essence, for the spacecraft to rise above the horizon at Goldstone, California, where there's a huge, big dish, 64-foot satellite antenna, basically, that is looking at the spacecraft between Earth and Moon and is going to take the signal and receive and send the actual questions. And of course, for that to happen, it has to be able to see the spacecraft. Well, because it's on a rotating Earth and the geometry of the Moon and where the spacecraft is and all that could not be changed, they had to wait for the spacecraft to rise over the horizon in the desert of Goldstone before the press conference could begin. So we're sitting there and we're, talking to each other, and, the executive producer guy's feet up on his desk, and there's a bunch of other people sitting on these couches in the office.
And are you at JPL?
No, we're in New York at the CBS News Broadcast Center on West 57th Street, hooked in electronically.
Okay.
Even then, even those dark ages, we had television by satellite, and we were able to see what was going on. We're watching the monitors, we're watching Houston, we're watching the press corps, and we're waiting for the astronauts to appear electronically. They also had a TV camera in the spacecraft. We're all waiting for them in Houston to be able to connect with them via the Goldstone ground station. And the PIO, Public Information Officer, comes on from NASA and says, well, we're waiting for the spacecraft to rise above the horizon, the mountains at Goldstone. So, I'm 23, right? And I'm thinking, that's weird. This doesn't make any sense. So I took out, your typical cliched envelope, and I started scribbling some equations. And, you basically take the radius of the Earth and the way it rotates and the height of the mountains, And I leaned over to my executive producer and I said, psst, Bob, NASA's lying. What? I said, they're lying to us.
Oh my God.
Now this was something so incredibly trivial, like who cared? But I said, if he's telling the truth, the mountains that they're waiting for the spacecraft to rise over have to be 5,000 miles high. They had to be lying. So it turned out later that what they were really doing is waiting for Jules Bergman, who had gotten drunk the previous night, who was the senior correspondent for space for ABC News. He had gotten drunk, he got up late, he didn't make it to the press room in time, and NASA was covering with a technical piece of BS so Jules Bergman, who was their pet correspondent, could get on camera and ask the first question in this historic correspondent asked astronaut in space live without a flight controller or a Capcom in between. That was my first example on the record of when I looked at NASA and realized they were lying, and it was so silly. With that as background, as I got into this whole area of looking at Mars, looking at the Moon, looking at the politics, looking at the secret societies, the agendas and all that, that first example where I was not believed, because who was I? I was just a consultant to CBS News. NASA could do no wrong. I mean, Wessler basically said to me, you got to be nuts. There's no way. He accepted, we all did in those days, NASA's word over anybody else having to do with the space program. Well, what Dark Mission is an expose that NASA can't be trusted, because starting with those 5,000-mile high mythical mountains, they have not been for 40 years. telling us the truth.
Fast forward, here we are. You've written this incredible book.